it was a very, very horrible way to start out a game. And now there's just a lot of stuff you can do. There's lots of side quests. You can do laves. You can go do battle warden missions, which is what this he'll also mention. You can do caravan missions. You can do so many different things now. And it's only 50% on what they're planning before they start charging a monthly fee again, as Yoshi P has said, the current project lead. They're planning on, like I said, 2 more raids at the very least to get out very soon. They're probably planning on a few more raids after that. I guarantee they're working on the next battle after Ifrit, since Ifrit just got released. They're probably working on way more side quests. There's already a lot. I would say there's at least 50 or 60 so far in the game. And that's quite a bit. These usually take about 30 or so minutes to complete per side quest, so there's quite a bit of content there. They're adding in more Grand Company stuff every patch since they've been released, and there's tons of holiday events. There's usually a holiday event going on almost constantly. So there's lots of stuff to do in the game now that wasn't there at launch, and it makes a big difference when you're actually playing the game now than it did back then. I mean, as I said, back then there was just the late quests and story missions to do. Now you have so many other things to do. It's not a big deal that you only get 10 per 32 hours. There's so many other things you can do now that make up for that.
These quests are very short, and they're all copy-pasted jobs that give no context to what you're doing. There's no quest writing, no character development, nothing that gives the world any character at all. Alright,
so this one right here, the side quests do give a lot of story. There's so much story in the game now to do the side quests and Grand Company missions. If you like lore, you are going to love them. I will guarantee you that, because each character has a specific way of saying something. The dialogue is, if you're in Limbs and Laminsa, you're going to see more people speaking like pirates. They're going to speak with they don't really technically speak. They, how the text is written, but it's written. Every character is written differently than another character. So each character in the game feels 100% unique, and a good number of people offer side quests now. And those side quests not only give you story, but give you ideas into the backstory of the cities, the characters, etc. There's a lot here now that wasn't there at launch. And it really makes exploring and doing these side quests sort of worthwhile if you're into the lore.
The exploration ends up being disappointing. From a technical perspective, the visuals are outstanding, and there are a few cool sights to take in. But the art design is mostly uninspired. The forests outside of Gridania, for example, are just copy-pasted green corridors. There are deserts and fields, but you won't find awesome eye candy hidden away in the nooks and crannies. Outside of the infrequent story quests and the short standalone quests, there's mostly just grinding, crafting, and hourly group missions called behests.
Alright, so I'm not going to touch up on these. I'm going to touch upon the fact that he said there wasn't a lot of exploration. When you go to Mordana and Korthus, there's a lot of really beautiful scenery there. So that was already in the game at launch. But now, there isn't a lot in Ulda or Thanalan, the Black Shroud, and Lanasha, which are the 3 big areas. Sadly, there's not a lot of varying sites there. They're adding them in as they go. So we have Beastmen tribes, which look awesome. In one of the areas in, I want to say Lanasha, there's windmills now that are there that add to the scenery. They're doing things to improve this, but it's basically the biggest reason why they didn't was because of the technical limitations of the engine. They have these big areas, and everything needs to be loaded into RAM for it to run smoothly, into your video RAM. So you need a very powerful card to play the game as a result. And as a result, they can't put a lot of stuff out there, because the more stuff they put in there, the more powerful your video card must be to play the game. So this is a technical problem that they couldn't get around. Problem is, I think they were just trying to be a little bit too ambitious, and Yoshi P thinks they were trying to be a little too ambitious as well. So what they're doing is they're actually planning the destruction of Eorzea, which will probably be a storyline event as well. Because, for instance, when they made monsters, certain monsters become bigger to be more Final Fantasy-like. All the NPCs in the game will start reflecting, well, why are the enemies all of a sudden bigger? And then there's even a quest line as to why they got bigger all of a sudden. So there'll probably be a quest line as to why they destroy a good chunk of Eorzea. And what I'm thinking they're going to do when they do this is break the areas up into little zones that you load between, similar to Final Fantasy XI. That way they can pack a lot of really cool things into zones, and then you just go to a new zone, it unloads everything from that previous zone, and then loads up everything in the new zone, and then you have very, very varied zones, and I think that's what they're going to end up doing, which is awesome. I would really, really love if they did that, because the zones do look a little bit bland. They're beautiful, but they do look a little bit bland over time. And so, if they did something like that, that'd be awesome. And they are planning the destruction of Eorzea, as I've said. So, who knows? They could be doing that, or they could be... They may have found out a way to optimize the engine to throw a whole bunch of stuff into the game and have it be as open and big as it is right now. Who knows?
There just isn't a lot of content, and the content that does exist is incredibly basic and totally lacking in personality. There are a few neat aspects to ease the pain of playing Final Fantasy XIV, however. While you select a class when you first start, you can really be anything you want, whenever you want, simply by equipping a weapon or tool associated with that class. Want to be a conjurer? Grab a wand. Want to be an archer? Equip a bow. When you grab a pickaxe, you become a miner. When you equip a saw, you become a carpenter, and so on. Each class levels up separately, though there is an overall rank that you level up in as well.
I wanted to touch upon this really, really fast. Physical level right here, that was just removed. You now have your class level. It's now called level instead of rank, and you level up that. Physical level is abolished. Just wanted to point that out for, if you're watching the video and didn't know.
You can even mix and match skills from different jobs, essentially making up your own class as you go. It's a pretty cool system, even though the combat has some issues of its own. It's pretty standard for the genre, though it has a few twists to make it at least semi-interesting. Unfortunately, there's not a good sense of progress here. Dozens of hours in and you're still fighting rats, dodos, and other creatures that seem best suited for low-level players.
Alright, so they've revamped a lot of the lower-level zones. They've even added in a new dungeon recently for level 15 players, which is pretty cool. The recent 1.19 patch added that dungeon in Lenosha, if I recall. And they've added in new enemies for these lower level zones. They varied them a lot more, so you're going to be finding more varied enemies. As well, they've fixed up the combat system. And this, I think he's going to mention, I don't recall. Before, it would be like if you want to melee attack an enemy, you use one of your melee skills. You usually got 3 of them by level 20. You use one of your melee attack skills, which would generate, which would use up energy, which is this is your energy bar, stamina gauge. It would use up this to do that, and then it would charge your TP, and then you'd use one of these skills to use that TP to use one of your special abilities. Well, he's a mage, so these are all mana based. But if you're a fighting class, you generate TP, and then you use spells or skills that would use TP. It was a confusing system, and it was annoying simply because the stamina gauge sucked. It was really, really a big annoyance to most players. And so what they did is, in 1.17 or 1.18, I can't recall exactly, in one of those two patches, they implemented auto-attacking. So you no longer have to manually attack, unless you're an archer. Archers still have to manually attack because they waste arrows upon shooting, so you don't want to just waste arrow upon arrow upon arrow. But still, every other class other than Archer auto-attacks now, and they got rid of the stamina gauge and just have the TP gauge. So it's a lot more simplified, but at the same time improved as a result. It doesn't feel like World of Warcraft combat, if that's what you're fearing. It still feels very unique. I was fearing it would feel like World of Warcraft combat, which I absolutely detest. I hate how that game plays in terms of the way you fight. But it doesn't feel like that. It still feels like a Final Fantasy game in terms of combat. It works very, very well. It's very snappy now. He's going to say it's unresponsive. You may have heard him just keep clicking a single one of these skills, and you hear the sound effect of just like a little ding every time he does it. And that's because the interface was very unresponsive before. You'd be spamming a skill 5 times, and it would only go off once because of how unresponsive the user interface was. And now, it's very, very snappy. You can press it once, and you know it's going to go off. So the interface has seen a big improvement, including combat, along with the auto-attack system.
And enemy placement is a bit bizarre. A lot of areas are barren of creatures to fight, while others feature only pushover weaklings and high-level beasts that will murder you in a single hit.
And I want to talk about this briefly, very briefly actually. Most enemies have had their spawns changed a little bit. It's more progressive, similar to other MMOs now, where you're in a low-level zone, you're fighting low-level enemies, you go to a new zone, there's a little bit of higher-level enemies here, you go to another zone, there's more higher-level enemies there. It progresses more steadily now. You're not going to find you're not going to be like, there's a level 5 mob here, and then right next to it there's a level 80 mob. You're not going to see that anymore, which you did see at the launch of the game. Maybe in a few areas, but very, very, very few areas.
Both within a few feet of each other. When you aren't fighting, you're crafting or gathering. In either case, this involves performing a minigame. It's a good idea, but crafting wears out its welcome in time. The interface is slow anyway, but it gets even slower here, and the animations are incredibly long. Making a single piece of cloth or a single plank of lumber seems like it takes an eternity. And be sure to grab a notebook, as the game doesn't save your recipes.
Actually, it does save your recipes now. Not on the initial craft, so you're still going to need to go to a website to get these. Luckily, the lodestone, which is what they provide, does show some recipes. But it does store your recipes now. It stores the previous 10 recipes for every job. So you have up to, I think it's like 70 recipes stored. On top of that, if you do regional lave quests, which are crafting lave quests to do, that has a separate book, and that stores your previous 10 one of those. So potentially you can have 20 recipes saved, and that's quite a bit of recipes. Usually you're not going to be doing more than 8 or 9 per every 10 levels of a crafting job. So the fact that it's storing 10 of those is very, very nice, in that you're not going to have to really think about it too much. You just say, I want to do this. If you have all the materials in your inventory, it'll automatically load them up and say, all right, do you want to make it? You say yes, boom, it already starts crafting for you, and you do the little mini game. So it saves you, it could save you anywhere between 4 to 7 or 8 clicks, and you only do 1 or 2 now instead. So it's very, very nice now that it does save your recipes. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the game at launch, but it is now. Actually, in the game now, you have the requested items, and then right below that you have your recipe book, and then you have materials clear and all that. So the interface has changed a little bit to accompany that.
Instead, you have to either remember them, write them down, or refer to some website or another. In fact, you need to refer to outside sources to learn a lot about what to do in Final Fantasy XIV. A game doesn't need to walk you through everything to be good, but this one goes far beyond wanting you to figure things out on your own. It puts incredible numbers of obstacles between you and your fun, and none of them come with any benefit whatsoever. The awful interface, the bare minimum quest design, the complete lack of focus and direction, the madness that is the economy.
I want to talk about, I've already talked about most of those issues, but the lack of focus, there is a very clear focus now. Your lower levels, you're going to be doing side quests, some side quests, you're going to be doing the laves, and you're going to be doing your storyline quests. You're going to do that up until about level 20. You can hit level 20, I would say you can hit level 20 at about 2 or 3 hours. If you have a friend to guide you through. If you're completely new, maybe 5 or 6. You can hit level 20 very, very fast in this game. And once you hit level 20, so many things open up. You have your you have the guild company, or no, grand companies to open up. You have the grand companies and everything that comes along with the grand companies, which is quite a few things. You have quite a few things, as in the caravan missions, things like that. You have your class jobs, and you have the raids start becoming available at 25. So you have a lot of stuff that opens up at 20, and even more stuff's going to be coming in the future. I mean, it may not feel like a lot, but it is quite a bit of stuff that opens up at 25. More so than most games. I mean, when I hit 20 in World of Warcraft, not a lot really changed. It's a big thing to hit level 20 in Final Fantasy XIV. It's a big milestone. The next milestone after that would be 30, then 40, then 50. 0 to 20 is very, very easy and quick. Once you hit 20, the world really opens up. There's a lot of stuff to do, lots of exploration. It's really, really nice in that aspect. And the game really does have a good sense of direction, specifically with the Grand Company system, as you know, which each Grand Company quest you do, there's going to be a new one that opens up after that, and there's a new one that opens up after that, eventually leading up to the effort battle, and that's all there is now, but they're planning to even add more, so that should be pretty interesting content to look forward to.
All these things make playing this unfriendly grindfest a total chore. If you want to know even more, the written review goes into a lot more detail. But suffice it to say, Final Fantasy XIV is not the online RPG you should be playing. Not by a long shot.
And that should end the review right here. I think I hit 2 parts. Yeah, so a lot has changed since the game. A lot more than I thought existed that had changed. The game is pretty enjoyable now. I mean, if you play the game, it's not going to be World of Warcraft. I mean, if you're really into that, but it is quite a different experience, and I recommend checking it out. It's only $20, no monthly subscription fee right now. Yeah, check it out. A lot of the points that this guy made are not valid anymore. The game's changed a lot.